Welcome to Connecting Business. I'm your host, Christina Munoz. February is Black History Month. Today, we want to discuss an important economic sector, Black-owned businesses. While this might seem like a niche interest, our guest today makes a compelling case for why supporting Black-owned businesses and Black entrepreneurship benefits everyone. Today, we'll explore this and more. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get started connecting business. I want to introduce you to Dr. Fitz Hill. Fitz is the Executive Director at the Scott Ford Center for Entrepreneurship. What an honor to see you again and connect again. How are you? And welcome to you, Fitz.
Well, thank you for having me, and so good to see you again. And it's always a pleasure to be in your company, and looking forward to having this great discussion with you on promoting African-American owned businesses.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you so much for your time. And I remember back in my journalism days, you were President Hill at the time, but you've also been Coach Fitz. So fill us in on your background for those that don't know. Tell us kind of how you started and where you are now.
Yeah, understanding businesses was because when I was in college at Ouachita Baptist, I owned a laundromat, and Quarters actually got me through Ouachita Baptist University, my wife and I at the time. So I had a little entrepreneurial background then, but it was really out of a case of necessity to try to find ways to make it happen. Left Ouachita, went to Northwestern as a grad assistant football coach, ended up coming to Fayetteville as a grad assistant football coach. Coach Hatfield, was fortunate enough to work for 5 different head football coaches at Arkansas, from Coach Hatfield to Coach Crow, to Coach Kynes, to Danny Ford and Houston Nutt. And, a lot of change went on back then during that 12 years of it, 12 years. But went to California as a head football coach, saw a lot of things there, from a little country boy from Arkadelphia, Arkansas, going to the West Coast, really opened up my eyes for a lot of things, and came back to Little Rock, assumed the presidency at Arkansas Baptist College. And after 10 and a half years, wanted to look more at community development through entrepreneurship and trying to help what I call the non-traditional entrepreneur.
Oh my goodness. And I love that the entrepreneurship focus really came full circle. I didn't know about the laundromat.
Yes,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It was called Dirt Buster. Believe it or not, back then I was always, being a journalism major, Dr. Downs at Ouachita, always talked about taglines and things like that. And at the time, Ghostbusters was a big movie, so I said, yeah, so if your clothes were dirty, come to the Dirt Buster. We'll send them home clean.
I think that's a fantastic name. See, so you have this business sense from a very young age, and Dirt Buster is fantastic. So fill us in on the Scott Ford Center for Entrepreneurship. If someone doesn't know what that is, what is it and what do you do?
Well, actually, over a period of time, it's been a process of helping. It was something I was doing as president, and I really didn't know it, from a community development standpoint. But what we started doing is finding elements in our community that needed to be rehabilitated. And so the first thing that we did in 2007, the car wash on Wright Avenue and Martin Luther King, I think at the time you would have known, was one of the most dangerous corners in Little Rock. In 2006, had 36 violent crimes. And when you really step away from communities and sometimes leave them untended to, bad things tend to happen. And when I took over as the president of the institution in 2006, we could not grow our school because of the violence surrounding our school. So I started thinking about owning a laundromat. And I said, hey, if you bring to empower the community, I know that people wash their cars. I know that we could put other business restaurants across the street, all those type of things to empower communities rather than running away from business or running away from the community. We saw a problem. And I say, there are 3 things you'll be known for in life: the problems you solve, the ones you create, and the ones you talk about. So we said we were going to do something about it. So we found some investors who went out to help us purchase the car wash. We changed the name, going back to Dirt Buster. We changed the name to Auto Baptism. So we said, we're a Baptist college. And so we said, hey, we're going to baptize cars. We're going to clean them up, help them come through. That was probably the first piece of entrepreneurship that our institution took on and it was transformational throughout our community. So the Scott Ford Center leads our external projects like that to help look and see how we can empower and embrace our community. And we have several pending projects that we're working on now, post, the pandemic kind of set everything back, but we're looking forward to hopefully 2021 will be a great year that we can empower our community and decrease crime in the process.
Well, and I love the words you use there, empower, because it's that whole teach a man to fish versus giving a man a fish, and to really empower those people in that area. So what a great idea. I love that I came back to the laundromat, and love the name of the auto baptism as well, baptism with the water concept. So you really kind of explained that connection between the economy and crime, but still in one area. Talk to us about how fixing that or getting that a little bit better under control can affect the community at large into that larger Little Rock city and even into West Little Rock and other areas of the community.
Well, perception is reality, and you're not going to go to a place that you're scared of crime. And so once we were able to do that, and I think, there are certain things that are catalytic in moving things forward. And so the car wash was kind of like at the, it was kind of like, as I call it, tipping point that really helped. When we went in there, changed it, rebranded it, put a new restaurant inside the building. We had our own crispy, crunchy chicken. Hey, if Church's Chicken had a $1.99 special, we were trying $1.79 special. I mean, we're in competition. And so you have a good bit, and so you had to compete. And so we had our dining hall, which we call the bistro, which we invited the community to come into once we had our new dining hall. And we had Catfish Fridays and Fried Chicken Wednesdays. And so we tried to realize, let the community know we were here and to come in. And once you start adding value to the community, then, things will start to transpire. For example, French Hill became a friend because I invited him over to Catfish Fridays, and he ended up helping us get new market tax credits to really $21 million expansion of our campus came from the federal government because we shared the vision and the idea of this is best for not only our community, not only Little Rock, but the state of Arkansas, that we empower our piece of the puzzle here. The entire puzzle is strengthened.
I love how we don't separate this. We don't take care of crime. We don't take care of economy. It is all completely tied together. And that's what you've really caught on to. Like you said, perception is reality. So whether it's somebody living in West Little Rock or a politician, if they think something of something, and it's negative, it's not going to be good for that area. So congrats to you on all of that. And I can speak as a journalist. I know that I was in broadcast journalism at the time, and we got to see from afar what you were doing. And we know that it was changing the area and it was changing the perception of the area. So congrats to you, and very job well done for that area. And I love the way you explain it there. Well, as you know, this podcast is sponsored by Kinetic Business by Windstream. And at the end of 2020, Kinetic launched the Black Business Support Fund, where Black-owned businesses are able to get up to $5,000 grants. The goal is to increase the number and stability of Black-owned businesses in the communities the company serves. And so we see a lot of statistics that get thrown around about Black-owned businesses, but two that really stuck out to me while preparing for this interview were that in a typical year, Black business owners were rejected for loans from traditional sources 2.5 times more often than Caucasian business owners. That makes my heart very sad. In two separate tests, the national nonprofit group, National Community Reinvestment Coalition, found that Black people seeking small business loans under coronavirus relief programs were treated less favorably than whites, even when they had stronger financial profiles. So because of the pandemic, the number of businesses in the U.S. plummeted by 22% from February to April, according to a working paper written by Robert Fairley, an economics professor at the University of California at Santa Cruz, and circulated by the National Bureau of Economic Research. The drop was the largest on record, and get this, Black businesses were hit especially hard, with a 41% drop from 1.1 million to 640,000. We're nearing 50% of Black-owned businesses. So the Kinetic Black Business Support Fund aims to try to bridge some of that gap. I'm also reminded of a previous interview that I did on this podcast, you might recall it, with Jessie Purcell. She was the director of the Hardin County Chamber and Business Alliance, where she talked about the support services her chamber provided to businesses in their area to get those relief funds, kind of helping them get help. So, Fitz, you've talked about networking and the work your organization does to make sure that when Black business owners show up at lending institutions, they are prepared and can be more successful. So can you elaborate about the importance of networking and relationships when it comes to entrepreneurship?
It's no question. Relationships are at the core of anything. Being able to pick up a phone and call somebody that you know that can help you, walk you through the process. I can probably imagine with those statistics that you mentioned that was just normally you taking an application, you putting it in, nobody knows who you are. They don't know your face. They don't know anything. And they say, I don't know you. But the relationships that you build, it's just like in education. The number one predictor for academic success in the classroom is not test score, is relationship with the teacher. So it's the same way with the entrepreneur. If you have a relationship with a bank, or a bank, and you start building that relationship, because I believe you do business with people that do business with you. And that's why I think, you have to think about why in many cases, when you look at the Asian population, and I saw this in California, which really opened my eyes, and I look at where the crime is the worst, is where the business operates the least. And so when you look at the Asian population, $1 stays in the Asian community 28 days. When you look at the Jewish population, it stays 16 days. When you look at the African American population, it only stays 6 hours today. 6 hours today. Prior to integration, $1 would stay in the African American community for 4 years. That's when you had Black Wall Street. You know why? Relationship connectivity. You had different ways, and so your money circulated within the community with your relationships. Now your relationship bankrupt when you have to leave your community to go outside and ask other people to support your community, and they don't live in it. And so it takes as much resource effort in building relationships outside of your community as within your community, because there are very few minority-owned banks. So the relationship component is critical for doing that, and that's why I applaud banks who have specific initiatives, that work specifically to target these populations, and not only just to say, hey, we've been affirmative, because that's not really the word. We want to be inclusive. We want to make sure everybody is represented at the table. And we realize, when you start looking back at the businesses and things that have demised, I think one thing in Little Rock that I found out doing my research as a Scott Ford Center is that today there are only 4 or 5 African-American owned businesses that were open and operating prior to integration that still remain open today. And so when you start looking, you got to look at that. Why? Well, once integration took place, those businesses that were doing business in those relational communities, they went away. And so now when you want to look and say that neighborhood is bad, well, when segregation was there, those businesses had to develop out of the situation of the Jim Crow era that we were living in. So now, when these things happen, gifts come together to identify what Windstream is doing to help the underrepresented entrepreneur. I applaud that, because what you're saying, you're trying to level the playing field to some social disadvantages that most people may not be aware of. And banks have to make those loan exceptions, understanding and looking at the strategic end of it and say, well, if I can help this person, help this community, man, we may send fewer people to jail. We may save more money there's a lot of ways we have to look at what's a good loan. Not just the basic black and white paper. No, you don't qualify. Well, there may be reasons why. Could have been a divorce. It could have been a death. It could have been a lot of things. But Christine, if you don't have those relationships, you don't know.
And so I'm curious, in your opinion, is it more important for that individual in that community to get out and do relationships in those other places, or do we need those businesses making sure they're targeting those other communities, or both? I assume so.
And I'm saying, but here's the deal: the relationship representation is critical. That you have somebody who's from that area, and you know, we do this. That's why you see now major corporations having vice president of diversity and inclusion. Why? To make sure that somebody's sitting around that table that's sensitive to make sure we are being inclusive of everybody. And so, you have CRA credits now from the banks, Community Reinvestment Act, that you must do to make sure that you're helping underserved communities, and banks have to give away X amount of monies to be able to do those type of things. But still, if your relationship bankrupt and you don't have those type of connecting points to help point you to, and that's what we try to use Arkansas Baptist College for, is to take, the underserved population and give a dream to what we'll call growing hope, give a vision to the visionless and empower. Because if you think about this, in 1884, when that school was started, there had to be an entrepreneurial spirit to build Old Main, because they had to raise $50,000 to come up with that. So, I mean, it didn't just happen. So that spirit has been there on and on and on. And when you get into business, it's going to be tough. And as a minority, sometimes it can be really, really, really tough.
It's such great points you're making there, and I so appreciate your insight, because it's not about checking boxes. It's not about just making sure you have XYZ in your business. It is about reaching that community, and what you've just shared. Crime goes down and economy goes up, and all these things are completely connected. So I don't ever want to get out of that checking boxes mentality, because that's not what this is about. And I think you've done a great job of sharing that. So I appreciate you. So
and let me give you, can I give you one point? And I don't, because we said it, because every social scientist has said every homicide costs $500,000.
Ooh, wow.
So you multiply that in Little Rock of 55. So now you go do the math, and not to even mention, the things that come along with that family. I'm just talking about the investigation, all those type of things. So I'm saying, when business goes up, crime goes down, and that's sometimes I don't think we look at the ripple effect of those type of investments.
That's exactly it. And I hope everybody listening and watching this podcast can at least have that takeaway. I'm going to move on to a topic that I feel like could be a little dangerous, because I think we could do a whole podcast on this. But jumping into social justice, we have seen riots. We have seen so many really frightening things happening within our communities. And at the time, as everything was happening, so many businesses came out with statements, and they would come out with what they wanted to say, and carefully crafted. And now that we're moving past the statements and into action, what advice can you give to businesses that might be going, I don't even know where to start the conversation?
Right. Well, listening is very important to, not so much speaking, because these things have been going on for quite some time. So it didn't just happen last week or last year. The pandemic really escalated many, many, many things. But, there are institutions, historically Black colleges, African-American churches. There are a lot of projects that are going on. But what we look at, there are three really basic criteria from community empowerment and community development that I always look at, that I think we have to really focus on. And I call them the big rocks for sustainable change and transformation throughout. Otherwise, we're doing good to feel good, and I'm not really about that. I'm about how can we be transformational for empowering people to change communities. And many things we got to look at. How can we change oftentimes the social infrastructure within the community that's leading to the injustices that are perpetuating these things? Those are major investments that can be made to look at things. How can we stop teenage pregnancy? Okay, how can we stop hunger? So we're looking at the outcomes, but very rarely are people looking at the incomes, because oftentimes your choices often dictate your outcomes, your day-to-day choices. So how can you attach yourself to organizations that can help change the trajectory of those people not getting the services that they need? I mean, when I was out serving during the pandemic in Southwest Little Rock, and I thought I was connected, but I was not. And to realize that people were there without basic necessities, babies sleeping on floors, okay, not having what we think in America is standard and operating procedures that we would have, and finding ways that you can connect with those people out there that's really, really, as I said, in the battlefields of social justice. And not just saying, hey, I want to make a donation, but how can we change? And remember this, anything that can be measured can be improved. So I think it's so important that you have a measuring stick to say, okay, like, for example, if you got this many murders this year, how can we have decreased this many murders this year? Because if you just look at that and say that you cut that down 20, then you save millions of dollars. All right. Well, what can we then go invest those type of funds to help feed the hungry or education opportunities? Because there are so many variables, it can almost be overwhelming. So you can't fix everything, but you have to find things that you think are transformation. Education, all right, so critical when you look at, and I see right now, if a young man does not graduate high school, particularly African-American male, he has lost so much opportunity. And when you look at the statistics of the likelihood of him going to prison has just increased exponentially. Well, so why? Because going back to look at those systemic ways, the decision he makes, well, number one, go back to no jobs in the community. All right. So now I'm getting involved in trying to take something that's not mine. Well, I wasn't in school that day. All right. Well, I may not have a father. So there are so many issues that need to be addressed that it's hard to sit here and say this can help fix social justice. But we have to go back and help address the social choices of our youth, the access to education, and building those communities and empowering African-American owned businesses so they can be role models. Think about the role models that were lost when Black Wall Street was torn down in Tulsa. Think about 9th Street here, the Black businesses that used to be here. Think about the role models that are no longer existent. That's why having banks and financial institutions to look at strategic financial initiatives long-term, not just coming in here and putting, as I say, a Band-Aid on a problem, but how can we look and see how we can change? And that's why I have to applaud, my partner. He helped me in French Hill when he saw new market tax credits. He said, hey, this is a great investment for this community. And so a $21 million investment turned into almost $250 million economic return on our community. And now you see the things you have there. For the next 100 years, the school will be able to educate those who oftentimes don't get a chance for higher education.
Well, I absolutely love your passion, and I'm going to walk away with those words, empower and engage. I think those are great goals for all of us. And Fitz, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today and for taking your time to share your thoughts with us.
But thank you so much for having me, and anytime, and appreciate all you all doing to promote the underserved and oftentimes underrepresented entrepreneur.
Well, thank you so very much. And thank you for joining us today for Connecting Business. For those who may want to know more about the Kinetic Black Business Support Fund, go to business.winstream.com/BBSF. And be sure to check out all the episodes at business.winstream.com/connectingbusiness. And we want to hear from you. Love the episode? Have a topic or guest idea? Email us at connectingbusiness@winstream.com. We look forward to sharing more stories through Connecting Business. Until next time, stay connected.